to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 115, otherwise known as season 6, episode 16. I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing okay. Beyond Fest has ended and just kind of taking in the rest of October.
Right on. Yeah, October. We're almost to Halloween. It kind of...
1 week left.
Yes, it's busting past us. Also with us, as always, is your other host, John Correa. How you doing, Correa?
Doing great. It's nice and early, and it's a bright and sunny day. It's fantastic. Love being here.
What have you guys been doing? Been seeing anything? That the big release that came out isn't really horror, but I do feel like we need to talk about it. Killers of the Flower Moon. Have we all seen Killers of the Flower Moon?
Yes.
I've seen it.
What'd you guys think of Killers of the Flower Moon? This is the new Scorsese movie for the uninitiated. Scorsese and DiCaprio doing their thing with De Niro as well.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you guys think?
I gotta say, it's amazing for a 3.5 hour movie to move that fast.
It's funny because you're right. It doesn't feel like a 3.5 hour movie until about the 2.5 hour mark. The first 2.5 hours for me were great. And then that last hour just dragged, at least for me. Ugh. And that's kind of when it's basically about the Osage Indians who their land has oil, so they all got really rich really quick, and a bunch of white people are basically trying to hone in on their oil by doing things like marry their women and stuff like that
and killing them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They end up being murdered, and the 2.5 hour mark is when it comes from being like a movie about the murders to being a movie about, it's like a courtroom drama kind of a thing. And that's when it kind of lost me a little bit. But anyway, what do you guys think?
I mean, it's definitely about, the evils of these men. I mean, almost
of these white men.
Yeah, these white men just coming in. Almost every single one of them came to Osage with these horrible, dark intentions of not only marrying in to get the head rights, but also to slowly poison or just straight up murder. And in the movie, the numbers are much lower than they were in real life, because it was in the hundreds that this was happening, these type of murders and stuff. And like, none of the main characters that you follow are good people at all.
I mean, you kind of get a feeling that DiCaprio, because he marries Lily Gladstone's character basically initially to get her oil rights, but he does kind of fall in love with her. So he kind of gets a little bit of a redemption arc.
Not really, though.
But he is still a dick. He still is. Yeah,
he's dumb as hell.
He's better than De Niro, put it that way.
Morally, but not really.
I would argue that there is nothing, not even falling in love with someone is a redeemable trait, especially when you participate in the murder of their entire family. That is, just and that's Killers of the Flower Moon is a beautifully made film. It's incredible. It's also very interesting to see how Scorsese is handling violence now, because it's very abrupt, it's very fast, and it's very pulled back. He doesn't go in. It's usually in a wide shot. It's usually a lot of stuff is happening about it. A lot of this is more, it's not so much focusing on the violence itself so much as them planning it and then executing on it, which is,
and when the violence happens, it's really well done because it's surprising. It's like you're watching, and like you said, it's the way he approaches it. It's like, bam, it's over, and you're like sitting there going, holy shit. That just happened. Yeah.
I will say that as much as they took the time to have representation with the Osage and indigenous in the movie, there's not a whole lot of character depth to a lot of the indigenous population in the movie. Lily Gladstone is just absolutely phenomenal with what she's giving. But a lot of these characters are just caught in a constant state of grief or being murdered. And so I see a lot of critiques coming from indigenous filmmakers and representatives, critiquing that. And that's the thing, is at the end of the day, this is a movie made by a white man, and he is focusing on, the horrors and atrocities committed by white men on this culture. I just wish that there was a little bit more depth to the characters, the indigenous characters on that side, because we get plenty of time with Leonardo DiCaprio where you do go, is this guy redeemable? Which is it makes you feel gross, even going down that road, just because of like what they're doing, what the atrocities that they're committing. So it's very much so, like, I really enjoyed it outside of that, though. It's very much so, again, though, just I called when I walked out, I told a friend, I'm like, yeah, it's an ally movie. It's him trying to tell a story and but at the end of the day, it's still his perspective. It's still that perspective of a white man. And that ending really just kind of like drives all that home, because you're pulled out of it and being told the story. And so it kind of feels like, oh, so this is kind of like one of those radio plays, essentially.
Yep, definitely. Another, speaking of allies, another movie I saw, which it's not really allies because it's actually made by a couple of homosexual men, but this isn't really horror, but it's got horror elements. Dix the Musical. Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah, I see the trailers.
It is, oh my God, this is the weirdest movie I have ever seen. It is, it opens up with a real sarcastic title card that says, this movie was written by two homosexual men who are playing straight men, which has never been done before. It's talking about how brave they are, and it's total sarcasm. But it basically is about these two twins who are separated at birth, and they find each other. They're vacuum cleaner part salesmen, and their companies merge, and they find each other, and they're like, and they look nothing alike, the two guys that are playing them, but they're like, it's like looking in a mirror, they're like, and they, what happened is their parents split up, and one of them took one of the boys. So they want to parent trap their parents into getting back together, is basically what it is. And Nathan Lane plays the dad, and he has these two little monsters. He calls them his sewer kids or his sewer boys, and they look like the monster from that one episode of Tales from the Dark Side that's under the bed, that in the room that the girl is renting. That
you mean the closet?
Yeah, in the closet. They look like that, and Nathan Lane feeds these sewer kids ham by chewing it up and spitting it in their face. Oh my God, it is the weirdest movie ever, and it is hysterical in the same way that like South Park or Beavis and Butthead are, where it's like trying to offend you. And at one point, for me, and I consider myself a very liberal person, it actually did cross a line, and I don't want to spoil what that line was, but it goes further and further and further and further, and then it crosses a line where I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me, right? This isn't a dream, this is happening. But yeah, it's a pretty crazy, it's hysterical though. I had so much fun with it, and it is a musical, and the two leads, they have the best harmony together. When they sing together is like, the musician in me was like, oh man, these guys are great. But anyway,
how is my girl Megan Thee Stallion in it?
She has probably the best song. She plays their boss at the vacuum cleaner thing, and she has a song basically talking about how women don't need to take shit from their men, and it's a big song and dance number, and the dancers are all like beating the crap out of men while they do. It's actually really, it's one of those points where it is, it's trying to offend.
Yeah.
But yeah, her song is probably the best song in it. Megan Mullally plays the mom.
Oh, love her.
And she's kind of okay. And Nathan Lane is much better as the dad. But it's and there are there are a lot of surprises in it. Oh my God. It's and it's the perfect length too. It's 86 minutes. It's the anti Killers of the Flower Moon. You could watch Dix the Musical 2.5 times in the course of one Killers of the Flower Moon. But yeah, it's the weirdest movie I have ever seen. I left the movie going, what the hell did I just watch?
Let's see, on my end, again, not quite horror, but I did get to see the new Chicken Run sequel, Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget,
Fuck yeah.
a couple days ago.
How was that?
And Chicken Run, is made by the Aardman company, the production company that made the Wallace and Gromit films, and I was a big fan of the original Chicken Run when it came out back in the year 2000. So we're talking like a 23-year time skip here, but they made a really great sequel. Like I really enjoyed it. It was beautifully animated, had a solid plot, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's interesting because the original movie was pitched as The Great Escape with chickens, and this one kind of feels like The Prisoner or a 60s era James Bond movie with chickens.
Fuck yeah, dude. I love Aardman. I could never get into Shaun the Sheep. It's just not my vibe, but yeah, I'm happy to see them back at it with Chicken Run. Although I would like another Wallace and Gromit feature at some point.
There is a new one coming, yeah.
Have either of you guys gotten to, this is a little old, but I just caught up with it. Have either of you guys gotten to Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey?
No, I haven't seen that.
No.
Oh my God. It's on, I think, Peacock. So I finally got to it. It is, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It is, it's exactly what you think it is. It's a Winnie the Pooh and Piglet slasher. It's a very stereotypical slasher. There are a bunch of girls in a cabin for the weekend that they rented, and Winnie the Pooh, what it is Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, and they tell you this at the very beginning, so this isn't really a spoiler. Christopher Robin goes off to college and leaves all of his animals. So they have to eat Eeyore, basically, is what happens, which makes them hate people. So Winnie the Pooh and Piglet's kind of a bigger dick than Winnie the Pooh in this movie, honestly. But yeah, they turn into serial killers, and it is brutal. It is, the killings are like, I mean, the effects are incredible, and the killings are brutal. I mean, everything from wood chippers to freaking heads getting squished by cars. Oh, anyway, yep. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. It's what you think it is.
Yeah, and I think they've got a sequel coming with Tigger.
Yes. Yeah, Tigger's not in it. So yeah, that would make sense. And also Rabbit and Roo weren't in it either. And Eeyore isn't in it because he's dead. But the others, you're left kind of wondering. You're like, where are the rest of these animals? So there's room for a sequel.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where I'm like, I'm all set. I'm all set. And that's not like Winnie the Pooh purist. It's just I'm all set. I gotta watch Roadhouse for the 20th time,
All right. Let's see. On my end, I got to see a couple of interesting and rare Hong Kong horror double feature. A Hong Kong horror double feature at the New Beverly last week. It was this kind of giallo-influenced slasher crime mystery movie called Heartbeat 100 with Maggie Chung, and this really bonkers martial arts horror action comedy movie called Return of the Demon. And I really do love category 3 of these genre Hong Kong horror movies, especially seeing them at the New Beverly, because you just have no idea what's going to happen. In Return of the Demon, like a Buddhist monk gets turned into a wolfman, and there's like a whole chase sequence through a police station. And Also, there's a scene where they have to fight a ghost princess that throws eggs at them. It's just very hard to describe these movies because just so much happens in them. Just it's just always a fun time.
I saw a couple of documentaries that I kind of want to mention. They're both very horror themed. The first one, Korea, I really want you to see it for a couple of reasons. It's called The Devil on Trial.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
It is okay. No, I want you to see it partially because this is about the real story that inspired The Conjuring 3. And I want you to see it partially to watch you get all worked up about the Warrens, but also partially because there are a couple of people in this. Well, one in particular, but basically there are people who agree with you. They're talking about the case of possession that led to this, that of the original kid who passed the demon on to the guy who did the killing.
Because that's real.
And the one who, no, listen to this. The kid, it's the kid's mom who wanted him to be exorcised and stuff. And they, at one point, and it's kind of just a flighty comment, but one of the brothers of the kid says, yeah, my dad really just wanted to get him, he thought that it was a mental health thing. He didn't believe the possession thing. And I'm like, okay, that is what's going to get Korea on board with this. And then later on, they're talking to the brother, and he doesn't believe any of it. He basically shoots down everything that happened. And he's like, oh, no, this was complete bullshit. He was not possessed. No one in this was possessed. This was, basically there are people in this documentary who agree with you. It's a very even keeled documentary where they go with people who do actually the kid who was possessed actually believes he was possessed, but you could tell he was being fed by the mom. But yeah, it's really interesting because the Warrens don't really play that big of a part in it. They mention them and stuff, but it's a pretty even keeled true crime documentary. It just happens to be the crime it happens to be about was the possession one, the devil made me do it one. But yeah, I think it's on Netflix, so you can watch it, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how some people agree with you, and that they're like, oh no, they should have gotten the mental health help that they needed at the time.
I love that some people agree with you, and it's like, oh, so people recognize truth, and that it's all charlatan bullshit. Yeah. I've voiced my opinion many times that exorcists are just charlatans, and
there are people who say the same thing you say about the Warrens. They said everything was about money, and they came at them with these contracts: sign here, sign here, sign here, and all they wanted to do was sell book rights and all this other stuff. So yeah, you're definitely going to be on board with that. This does not glamorize the Warrens at all, so you won't get. That won't trigger you.
Okay,
but yeah, it's a pretty good overview of what happened. And the other one, which is the complete opposite, not even keeled at all, it's the other documentary I saw. Is called Monster Inside: America's Most Extreme Haunted House. This is on Hulu.
Oh yeah,
it's about McCamey Manor, or more specifically, it's about Russ McCamey, who runs McCamey Manor, and honestly. It's kind of a hit piece, but it's a hit piece because nobody in McCamey's camp wanted to participate in the documentary. They say at the end, they're like, yeah, we let him know we're doing this documentary. He didn't want to participate. We let him know every point that was brought up, and he didn't want, he didn't even give us any refutations or anything. So, they kind of made an effort to make it even keeled, but basically what they do is they talked to 3 people who went through his haunted house, quote, haunted house, because what he does is not a haunted house. What he does is just torture people.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock and you don't know, McCamey Manor is the haunted house that the admission for supposedly there's a 20,000 person wait list. Admission is a bag of dog food or 4 cans of dog food. And if you make it all the way through this 8-hour torture session, you supposedly will get $20,000. But no one's ever made it through. And what he does is he tortures people. And that's why he's ex-military, he's ex-Navy, and he's had ex-military go through it, and they can't even stand it. So it's like but he comes off as pretty much of a cop. Like there's one woman who actually, without going into detail, she accuses him of sexual assault on her what they call tours.
It's also covered in the documentary Haunters, I believe, at Kingly Manor. Like they're one of the 3 haunts that they cover in that. And that one, McKinney Manor, does participate in it. And even in that film, with them participating, you catch way off vibes of like stuff where it's like, so I understand the price of admission, the NDAs, all that stuff, and it's people know you're signing up for torture, but like, what do they do with the footage? Because that's what the big thing that weirds me out is like, how can they afford it if it's just donations? We know he's recording everything, and there's like a website where you see like best of clips but I mean, it's best of clips of people being tortured, but
what he does with the footage, he posts it on his site. And that was the one thing that the girl who kind of accused him of sexual assault, there's a gap in the footage. And he kind of coerced her to fall asleep for part of it. And there's a gap in the footage, and she's like, "Oh, I have no idea what happened at that point." So to answer your question, what he does with the footage, he posts it, and as part of the waiver, where he's allowed to. As far as where he gets his money, he has a Navy pension, but also one woman, because at one point they talk about the people who are exposing him, and one woman finds him working in the garden center of a Walmart in this documentary. So supposedly he works in a garden center of a Walmart to get his money. But anyway.
That's one of those ones where it's like, it's a hit piece. I'm like, is it a hit piece if they're not good people though and are exposing them?
It's a hit piece because he doesn't defend himself, but you don't get the impression that anything that's being presented is untrue. He really does do these things. He really is this way. They talk to his ex-wife. They talk to a ton of people. They talk to, I think she's an ACL. No, she's not an ACLU lawyer. She's a lawyer who dealt with detainees at Guantanamo Bay. And she makes a big point of saying this disclaimer. She goes, "Nothing I'm going to say here is admitting to anything that happened at Guantanamo." I mean, it's like a big disclaimer that she has to say so she doesn't get in trouble with the government. But she talks about how his waivers that people sign are probably, he breaks them because the waivers basically say, you're going to get hurt. You might lose teeth. You might, get concussions. We're not responsible if you die. If you have a heart attack or a stroke, we're not responsible. But then she says, looking at the footage, people will say the safe word or ask him to stop and he won't. That's when the waiver goes out the window. This guy is culpable for the things that he does because he's not holding up his side where he's going to stop when they say the safe word. So right. Yeah, it's a really fascinating documentary, but it is very one-sided only because McKamey's side refused to participate.
Right.
But again, it's kind of a hit piece, but you don't get the feeling that anything said in it is untrue at all. I mean, because the dude's got a bad rep anyway. And this just kind of preaches to the choir.
Well, it's like I said, like with the Haunters documentary, because they follow like 3 very big, independent haunts, and he's one of them. And even though it's like they're presenting them like they would like a regular haunted house, like you still catch those vibes of like, this doesn't seem that great.
He used to have a real haunted house. I mean, when he started, it was just a regular haunt, but then every year it got more and more. And he's actually been run. It used to be in San Diego down here. And then he got run out of town, and he's been run out of Illinois. I think now he's in Tennessee, but he keeps getting run out of town.
Wonder why.
Yeah. And just, the temptation of $20,000 is pretty strong, but at the same time, so I haven't watched these docs, but I heard that it's just insane what they put these people through.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there actually is an end to this thing. I think that he'll just keep doing it until people quit. I don't think it's like they say 8+ hours.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like if they don't have a set time, then I don't think they have any intention of stopping until you give up.
Yeah, I don't think there's a $20,000 reward. I think that he will eventually, everyone has a threshold and they're going to stop. I don't think there is a $20,000. I think that he is just going to keep going until you quit and he'll be go, no one's finished this. Well, no one's finished it because there's no end. You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and on the horror side of things, uh, have any of you seen that fan film Never Hike Alone or any of the spinoffs?
This is the Friday the 13th one, right?
Yeah, the Friday the 13th fan film Never Hike Alone. Well, they just released the sequel last Friday the 13th this month, Never Hike Alone 2. And I've been keeping up, on and off with these Friday the 13th fan films, because there hasn't been any new official Friday the 13th stuff for so long because of all the rights issues and all that. But this actually felt like a pretty solid, sequel or story within the franchise, and specifically the Tommy Jarvis cycle, because they actually got Tom Matthews and a couple people from Jason Lives to actually replay their characters for this movie, and it's solid. It's fun because the first Never Hike Alone was an interesting concept where it's like this YouTuber hiking character is hiking through Crystal Lake and he gets chased by Jason, and this kind of continues and kind of shows kind of the other side of that, because Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis has been working as a paramedic in Crystal Lake all this time and waiting for Jason to show up, and he's still kind of fucked up about what happened. And so they cross paths, and now he has to fight Jason all over again. And I really like these movies. And they also had another fun kind of spinoff one where they have Camp Crystal Lake during the winter, so we finally get Jason in the snow. For fan films, these were very solidly made and felt in line with the kind of mythos and lore. And they're on YouTube, so you can just watch them. And again, being starved for new Friday the 13th stories, this was a pretty solid Friday the 13th story.
And now let's welcome in this episode's special guest. We have cinematographer Clayton Moore, who just did the Puppetman on Shudder. How you doing, Clayton?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. The question I always like to start out with is basically from the beginning. How did you get your start in cinematography and in movies?
Well, growing up, obviously as a kid, I watched a lot of movies, and they were always very inspiring to me. And just the storytelling, the magic of it all, visually and putting the story together like that. So I always had it in the back of my mind that I was interested in that, but I didn't really realize that it could be a career. I grew up in a small town in Montana, and, Hollywood and LA just seemed so far away from there. And so it was coming to a point where I was going to graduate high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something in the visual arts. So I went to a tech school, and I got a degree in graphic design. And after that, I moved back home. I tried to, I graduated, I moved back home, and I wanted to kind of figure out what my next step was going to be. Well, while I was there, my uncle worked at the local television station, and he said, we need a weekend photographer for the news. And so he got me a job there shooting news stories on the weekends. And so I got started in news. And then from there, I also got a job at another TV station doing technical directing. And so I would help produce shows, and then the producers would come in and they'd do a multi-camera interview type show. And so I spent about 2 years doing that. I was working 7 days a week, 5 days at one TV station, and then the weekends at the other station. And so there was a lot of on-the-job learning there. And so I learned a lot of the basics of lighting and a lot of technical things about cameras. And we were shooting on tape at the time. So I learned how to do linear editing, and non-linear editing was just starting to come up and be a thing. So, a lot of on-the-job training there. And then I used my experience in news to get another job. Uh, I got a job in Las Vegas. So I wanted to get up to a bigger market. And so I got a job at the news station in Las Vegas, and I moved to Las Vegas. And I lasted probably another year and a half before I kind of got burnt out. And I really wanted to flex my narrative and creative muscle a little more. I kind of got sick of chasing car accidents and fires and stuff.
Totally
And
understandable.
quite frankly, at the end of the day, it's very depressing to see it's just all doom and gloom all the time. So from there, I got a job at a small production company, and so I got started doing editing and shooting. And instead of news stories, it was commercials or training videos or events. I mean, you name it, whatever came through there, I would kind of get my hands on a little bit. And then 2008, as I'm sure a lot of people like myself got laid off. And from that moment, I was just like, well, I'm just gonna be freelance now. And so ever since around, '08, I've been freelance. And over that time, I've built up a lot of clients. I have my own production company. I've met a lot of people, collaborated with a lot of people. And it was through that kind of path that my career took that I was able to meet Brandon, the director of Puppetman, and a lot of the other collaborators that I work with frequently now.
No traditional film school, just on the job.
It's funny because in short, no, I worked my way up over about 10 years, and then I kind of felt like I got to a point where I was kind of plateaued, and that's when I went back to school. I went to film school then. Um, and then that was a whole other story. It took me 10 years to finish film school because um, I started going to class, and then I started getting work, and I started getting busier, and then school kind of took a backseat to that, building my career. But I did just recently finish. I got my bachelor's degree in film.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a big accomplishment for me because it was just one of those things where it was like, I started this, let's finish it. I need like 10 more credits,
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of on the job training at first. And then, as I got older, I was able to hone it with more of the theory and the history of film and all that when I went back to school.
It's funny. Our last few episodes, we haven't really been bashing on film school, but all three of us are film school graduates. But we've had guests, like we had Nick Matthews on, who didn't go to film school.
Yeah, I just listened to that.
And before that, we had Marcus Friedlander, who went to film school, but said that it taught him storytelling and all of the technical stuff he learned like from YouTube videos. So it's kind of funny that we're kind of making a case, not really against film school, but you don't need film school. You can do it, on the job, or you can do it through book learning, or well, the common thread is everyone says the best thing about film school is access to equipment and people.
Yeah. And learning the theories. Yeah. Because it's if there's one thing, especially since we've been on a cinematographer kick lately, you're our third one in a row, which is awesome for me. I love listening to the tech stuff. But it's everyone goes a different journey. And that's what's so cool about it with film, and especially like camera and stuff. There's no like, all right, so you go to school and then you get an internship over at Sony and then you do this. And no one does it the same way. So whenever someone asks like, hey, how do I get into this industry? It's like, any way you can, man,
Yeah, no, it does seem like a lot of the cinematographers we've been talking to lately also got the most out of just hands-on experience and their own kind of jumping off from film school into the industry is what kind of elevated them into their careers.
And a big part of that is the democratization of filmmaking, and that we've seen in the past 20, 30 years. The equipment is more accessible, more affordable.
Yeah.
YouTube obviously has been a huge game changer. There's so much information that's out there freely available. And, it still comes back to people willing to share that information. And like you mentioned, the old way was absolutely go to film school, graduate, get a job as an AC or a PA, and work your way up. It would take years. But, people, there's such a higher skill level now, and people that are skilled and talented are able to, it's so much easier for them to be able to put their vision on the screen and get it out there to show people.
Yeah.
You don't need to go through all those hurdles anymore.
And along came found footage where everyone could make a movie.
Yep.
Yeah, and Clayton, I was going to ask, how did you start your own production company?
It was just one of those things where I had been in Las Vegas for a couple years working at the news station and the production company I was working at. And, similar to film school, it's like you meet everyone that you work with. And, once I went freelance, people still had my name in their phones and stuff. And so, I had a Rolodex of people that I could call up and say, hey, do you got anything going on? You need a camera operator? Do you need help with anything? And so it started from there, and it just grew and grew and grew to the point where it was like, okay, well, this is kind of a thing now. I better get the taxes in order, and I better get, all that official stuff figured out. And it just sort of happened.
The big thing with cinematography for like film as opposed to news is the lighting. How did you learn basically what cinematographers call painting with light? How did you learn the lighting technique for narrative?
So, yeah, when I first started with news, it was square one. I had, my focus at that point was like expose the image. And then over time there was a gradual realization of it's more than just exposure. You need to compose the shots. You need to visually tell the story with your shots. You need to sequence your shots, because I was also editing my stories. So it was a small enough market where I would shoot the story, edit it, and then watch it go to air. And sometimes even help with that process too, if there was someone called out sick or something. But yeah, basically what I realized was, why doesn't my stuff look like this person's stuff or that person's stuff? And I quickly realized it came down to, how was I using the camera as a tool to tell the story? And what did I have available in my toolbox to do that? Lighting, lenses, composition, the basics. And so I just dove into everything I could find on that stuff. And a big part of it was looking on cinematography.com. They had a message board or forum. They might still do, I don't know. Listening to DVD commentaries of cinematographers that inspired me. And obviously I'm shooting local news. I'm not able to put up huge lighting rigs or anything, but I got good at working with what I had. And I have one light. How do I best utilize that light? Should it be here? Should it be a backlight? And that was one thing about news that I actually really did enjoy, was you're walking into a situation, you've never been here before. What's the best way to tell the story with the tools that I have?
Right.
And I think those skills early on helped me become very efficient and fast when I got onto bigger sets and bigger productions.
I was going to say, you have to be quick too, especially if you're just jumping on site and going, all right, we're rolling real fast. So yeah, you don't have time to do 3-point lighting and do, crazy gels or anything.
I still to this day love doing documentary work, because it kind of brings me right back to those early days where you're coming in and you just have the basics. You don't have huge crews or anything, or huge equipment lists, which I love that stuff too. But there's something about it. There's just a purity to it when you're just kind of rolling with a small crew and you're quick and nimble. And that's something that me and Brandon like a lot too. We can get into that a little later, but there's an immediacy that you can capture without having to wait for your grip truck to park, unload, load in. You lose something in that process.
You ever see Nightcrawler?
Oh yeah.
Is that what you were doing?
Absolutely. Not that extreme.
Not exactly.
When I got started in Montana, there was none of that. But when I got to Vegas, there was maybe a little bit of that.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's rough being there for the real events and stuff. I
Oh,
can see why you were saying that.
sometimes I was on night duty and you'd hear something on the scanner and you'd get there before the police and stuff get there.
Oh, I
Yeah,
don't I don't like that at all. That's like
I didn't either.
I used to work on a lot of competition reality shows,
Yeah.
and there would be injuries on set, and sometimes I would be there before like somebody else shows up, and they'd be like, "Oh no," because they were big ones too. So like, one time a guy's foot was backwards, and they were like, "What do we do?" And I'm like, I'm just here to fill out the thing so that he's covered by the insurance. I can't touch anything else. I don't know what to say to you. What's your last name? Middle name?
What's your emergency contact?
I was directing the band for a production of Tommy before it went to Broadway. We did it first. This was the early 90s.
Nice.
And it was a community college thing. So one of our guitar players was a print news reporter, and he showed up one day all shaken up, and he was having trouble playing, and we're like, "What's going on?" He's all, "Well, my last assignment of the day was a train accident, and I got there before the police."
Oh.
Yeah, he
Oh.
he got to see some grossness that day, and he was shaken. He was rattled.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember some of the things I've seen. And it's like, just from a news background, you hear a siren go by or something, your ears kind of perk up and you're like, you get a little bit of that rush again. And you're like, I want to go see what's happening, but it's a mess. You don't want to get too much into that stuff.
My neighborhood's chaos enough with
It
that.
can get depressing, man.
And has any of that experience translated into your work on the numerous horror movies that you've been working on?
I think I always bring past experience into my work, whether I realize it or not. They might definitely influence some of the choices I make. There's a specific scene in Puppetman where we lit the entire scene with just the ambulance lights, and that was probably inspired by that visually, because I would probably would have remembered seeing something like that and thinking, "Oh wow, this horrible scene of this accident, but this lighting is insane. How cool it looks right now."
Yeah, I can definitely see that, considering all the deaths are treated as accidents, or well, a lot of the deaths are treated as accidents.
Yeah. Speaking of Puppetman, let's dive into that. What was some of the visual cues that you were working with? Because one of the things that not refreshing, like we said, we've had a lot of cinematographers on recently, and almost every time everyone was like giallo. So there's a lot of deep, contrasting colors. With Puppetman, you were playing with shadows a lot. Which like some deep shadows on the faces in various scenes, and like it would change sometimes depending on like what was happening with the mood and stuff. So what were some of the visual cues that you guys were messing around with and developing with it?
When we start a project together very early on, we like to create a set of rules, and that'll be the basis of everything. What does this movie look like? What does this story look like? So very early on, Brandon and I will just hang out. We'll watch movies that we like, or movies that we think, we like the look of, maybe for our movie. So a few of those early films that we watched, the biggest one was probably The Empty Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie didn't get enough love. We've talked about it before. Yeah.
Kind of got buried.
Well, I think part of it was the name too. I mean, because
Yeah.
it kind of sounds like a Slender Man kind of a thing, but yeah.
Yeah, the only physical release it got in the States was on DVD at Redbox, which I own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Good for you. Yeah, I was waiting for the Blu-ray to come out. I think I lost track of it. I got bored of waiting. So, because yeah, that's a whole nother discussion, physical media, which I'm a huge fan of. But some of the other movies we looked at, Brandon is a huge Fincher fan. So we looked at Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo specifically. One of the rules was that we want to feel the space of these locations. We want everything to feel naturalistic. And if people go into shadow, it's okay. You know, we don't want to be overly worried about overlighting something. And I don't think it was ever to the point where we lost exposure, but it was always towing the line, which was very terrifying and exhilarating for a DP. But it's, you know, I've had a lot of experience with the red camera system, so I kind of knew what we could get away with and what we couldn't.
Yeah, because as if everything's lit, you can always darken in post, but you can't
Yeah.
put in more light. So towing
Yeah.
that line, if that's terrifying.
Well, you
But
can, but how does it look?
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing too, is it's those decisions that it's those bold decisions you make on set that'll help you stand apart. Because if you're too safe with everything, then your movie becomes too safe.
Right. There's no visual language that stands out. It just looks, because that
Yeah.
was really taking me back, especially, you know, the contrast of our previous ones. I was like, this is lit very well and very realistic, but like can still see. And then seeing, you know, especially when Puppetman was taking over and stuff, the change of like shadows in the scenes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're playing with some stuff here. So yeah, I could definitely, as soon as you said like social network and girl with the dragon tattoo, I was like,
Yeah.
yep, that's all over the place. That Fincher. There's a few times, especially early digital Fincher, where I'm just like, bro, bud, come on, just one more, just
Yeah.
throw a key in there, bud.
You know, it's even for them, it was a learning process.
But it also was
But yeah.
exciting to see
Yeah.
like how much like you can get with so little and still see the details lighting wise. It's insane.
It's incredible.
When Puppet Man was taken over the lead girl, it was an amazing mix of both lighting and acting, because she was really good at it too. Where all of a sudden she'd be like, you know, oh yeah. Now was that something that you knew? You're like, okay, wait, she's going to change, so I need to change, or was it just kind of a happy accident that it happened that way?
Well, obviously, I'm going to take credit for that. Since you noticed it, um, I think it was a bit of a happy accident, but like you said, it's a collaborative process. So I'm always trying to see what I can do to help heighten the actor's performance and what I can do to help tell the story the best way visually. So maybe subconsciously some of those ideas did come into play whenever it was time for her to change, or, you know, for Puppet Man to appear on someone. One of the things was when that did happen, I wanted to try and remove the eye light when I could. Little things like that, you know, here and there. So maybe we took some bits and pieces from different ideas and incorporated them all together. And then, you know, through the collaborative process, everyone's job comes together and makes the whole thing awesome.
Was it challenging coming up with the visual language of the killer? Because with this film, it's the Puppet Man. He's behind this.
Mhm.
You never see the manifestation of him. He's controlling, I don't know from where, but definitely,
It's almost like a Final Destination kind of thing. That's what it struck me as, like a Blumhouse Final Destination, because, you know, you never actually see the antagonist, but it's always present.
Yeah, we get that a lot. And Brandon has even said, and we just discussed it early on, that it was going to be influenced by Final Destination. But I think part of it is, you know, showing these locations and these spaces and keeping them a little darker and moodier. Even our day exteriors, there was a lot of work going into controlling my contrast ratios on those to still keep those looking like daytime, but also to keep them kind of subdued and darker. And so that might have been kind of where we were going with that, was we wanted the locations to feel spooky, like the Puppet Man could always be here. Maybe he's in the shadows in the background, or maybe he's just slightly off screen here and where it's dark.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that did. And having it in those in like real spaces definitely adds to that dread of like, it's one of those ones where afterwards you're like, what's in that dark corner over there?
Yeah, and we use a lot of like slow dolly moves, for example. When me and Brandon shoot, either the camera's locked down, or if we do move the camera, it's very much has a purpose for moving. But we always try and maintain that nice, solid frame. And that's something that adds to the cinematic language of our work as well. Is it's almost harkening back to, old school where everything was on sticks or nice big dolly moves. So we like to utilize tools like that as well.
No, let's backtrack a little bit because you and Brandon also did Superhost for Shudder a couple years ago, and I for one loved Superhost. I think it has one of the most delicious antagonists ever. The owner of the Airbnb is just, I love watching her. She's crazy. What was the difference between Superhost and, I mean, clearly Superhost is a brighter movie, like stylistically, but what were the other differences between Superhost and the Puppetman?
The biggest difference was the scale of the production. Superhost we shot in the midst of COVID. The whole set was locked down. The whole crew, we had 6 people total.
And the cast is only like 4, isn't it, or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So we shot that on a mountain that's near Las Vegas. We would drive up every day, 30, 45 minutes. The crew or the cast was all staying at a hotel on the mountain, and some were even staying in that house. So that was the biggest thing, was the scope of it. And just that comes back to we had a pretty tight script in one location, simplifying things. I had a small grip package, and we were lucky enough to be able to just load it into the garage, and so it just lived in the house there. And just having 2 guys to help me, and I was setting up lights with them and adjusting things on the fly. It was crazy, but there was this energy to it that's hard to replicate when you scale up to a bigger production. Because like I said, there's an immediacy. You get things set up faster. You have more time with the actors. You get more takes. So that was the biggest difference. Was we had a crew of 6 people on Superhost, and on Puppetman it was probably up around 50 people a day on set. Sometimes it was crazy.
Cool. Yeah, I think COVID kind of brought out some creativity because there was Host, just regular Host, which shot on Zoom, and then movies like what was it called, Alone with You, I think, where it's just in one room, and I think it's Barbara Crampton and Dora Burge are all on a phone, but it's mostly just one. I mean, I think COVID kind of brought out creativity in people, who wanted to keep working, the people who wanted to work.
Yeah, everyone was just itching to work. It sucked because we were, it was like everyone was quarantining. People didn't want to do projects because there was a lot of red tape to go through. And it's like, what do we do? Do we test it? It was a mess. And there was just so many obstacles to it, besides the global pandemic happening. But people were just wanted to create. People wanted to work.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, for me especially, it just like shooting that movie during COVID was like such a cathartic experience, because it was just like all this pent up energy, and you're just like, oh, I can release this and get creative and make something.
It's really crazy hearing the stories of the various narratives that were made during COVID, and how much of it is like, man, you're really going back to like making my first feature for like 10 grand type of energy, where everyone's wearing multiple hats and running around, and it's like all one location. Like Benson Moorhead, Something in the Dirt, where it was just like 6 people total overall, and it was like,
Yeah.
And on the set itself, it was just 3 of them, and they were doing like everything. I was just like, oh, that they're getting like hardcore, like film school, post film school, like trauma coming back.
That's what I was going to say. It's a total film school vibe and stuff, but because it's a different kind of creativity. It's basically making it work, with what you have. Yeah, exactly. Let's look forward to the future. What do you got coming up?
Me and Brandon just finished another movie together. Yeah, and this one's another, it's a little bit on the smaller scale, similar to Superhost. So we're in post on that.
Is it going to be another
Um,
Shudder release?
I'm not sure where it's gonna end up. I'm sure Shudder will definitely take a look at it. Hopefully. That'd be awesome. I love having my work on Shudder. It's cool because you can share it. Say, hey, look, I shot that. And then I'm also currently working on a show for PBS right now, which is a docu-series travel type show. And that's been incredible too. That's been awesome. That's like a dream job. Um,
What's it called? You allowed to
yeah,
tell
it's
us?
it's called Outdoor Nevada.
Okay.
So we,
Oh,
we
awesome.
basically travel the whole state and do little stories and features on all the little towns and stuff, places you would never go.
Can you tell us the name of the other movie with Brandon you're doing yet?
The title is not yet released.
Okay, okay, okay. Now, where can they follow you to find out when the title is released and anything else you're working at? You got any socials?
I have socials. My Instagram is Clayton Moore DP. That's also my website, claytonmooredp.com. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd pretty much just do Instagram and my website.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. As for us, you can find us on all the socials under Eye on Horror or at iHorror.com, which is the site that we call home. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, so go give them a listen. A new album out now, After Image. Our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so go give him a like. And go watch The Puppetman on Shudder. And go back to Superhost. Is Superhost still on Shudder?
Yeah.
Go back to Superhost. Go back to Superhost. That's a great one too. So yeah, do a Clayton Moore double feature, The Puppetman and Superhost.
Make it a triple feature and add Z.
Yes. Well, I did second unit on Z, but the other one I would suggest as a triple feature would be It Stains the Sands Red.
Stains the
Oh.
Sands Red. There is that also on
Yeah.
Shudder?
I'm not sure where that one is. I know for a while it was on HBO Max or whatever they call it now. But Z is also another great movie that Brandon did. And I wasn't the main unit on that, but I did do some second unit stuff for that.
Ah, there you go. Well, track them down. Just find anything that Clayton Moore's worked on and watch it.
It's all brilliant work.
It Stains the Sands Red is currently streaming on Peacock, Tubi, Prime, Freevee. So you have options on finding it.
Go to Tubi. We love Tubi.
Yeah.
It's also available on Blu-ray.
On
Oh.
Blu-ray for you
Phys-
physical media hounds.
Yeah. It may be one of the last films available on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, again, thanks for joining us this morning. And everybody go see The Puppetman on Shudder. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards,
I'm Jacob Davison.
Jonathan Korea.
I'm Clayton Moore.
keep your eye on horror.